Dear students, good afternoon. This is Maria Burns again, your professor for the geography class. And I have prepared a short video for week 2 plus week 3. So what I'm doing is I want to make sure that you're all on the same page for week 2. And at the same time, I'm preparing you because some students are just ready way in advance and you've been asking me, okay, what's next? What do I do for week number 3? So I would like to make the transition smooth. So today we're going to talk about your paper and test for week 2 and then the preparation for the next week. This is just a reminder that you know where to find me by email, by appointment, by Skype, and so on. And let us start with week 2. I'm going to prepare you for the test. Some of you have taken the test. Some others have been asking me questions. So let me just, prepare you 100%. It's very important for each one of you to know global geography, and this study is really important, especially for supply chain, economy, business, and so on. One of the many reasons is when you meet people, when you encounter business partners or prospective clients, or you name it, when you network, people come from different parts of the world. And I have provided you with some pictures here just to remember that our DNA, no matter how complex it is and no matter how many thousands of years back it goes, has memory. So there is memory in our DNA, and it's very important to speak people, first of all, by respecting their own culture, religion, language, everything. But at the same time, it's always nice to know where they come from. Because believe me, our DNA is such a powerful thing. It shapes a part of our character. Another thing has to do with the historical evolution of nations. So if you go back in time and you compare the ancient country with the modern country, sometimes it's so impressive to realize that, oh my gosh, some of the culture, some of the norms follow us like our shadow. So that is one of the many reasons why you have to appreciate this class in particular. Next, you have to be able to compare and contrast local, global, the activities, the trends, the networks, the way they make business in different parts of the world. And also trade agreements, the laws, the regulations, the organizations, geopolitical tensions or diplomatic relations. So for all of these reasons, you have to balance very well the local component versus the global component. Next, you have to be familiar with the way they do business, the way they import, the way they export, what products they have. You have to keep in your mind this virtual global map. I have added here some pictures that you might find interesting. The first one is from the Amazon office in Seattle. And you see there is an amazing building. It looks so great. Second, in Munich, this is a 4-cylinder building, and this is a building from BMW, the great, well-reputable manufacturers. So it's interesting how they created a building that looks like cylinders, engine stuff. And finally, in India, there is a fisheries department that has a shape, the building has the shape of a fish. So I just want you to keep in mind the culture, the imagination, the creativity of people, and just have something to say when you meet people like, hey, I know where you come from. I know much more than what you think. Of course, the more we know about countries, the better strategic decisions we can make. And at the same time, we can create supply chains, we can create logistical patterns and agreements with different countries exactly because we know how people work, what the norms are, and so on. We also have to take into consideration the demographics and the specific geographic particularities. For example, countries that have high mountains or extreme weather, or they are landlocked. You have to be familiar with all that. That's the only way, knowing about countries, right, to create the perfect supply chains. Now, you also have to consider that within our career path, international trade, transport, logistics, supply chain, we travel a lot. So it's always good to know where you're going and be prepared. Now, let us talk about the papers of this week. I've already sent you a circular, but here are the 3 papers that you'll have to study for this week's test. This is the material. And I'm covering the very basic information of these 3 papers. These are some of the questions that you'll need to answer in your test. Again, some students keep on asking me questions, so I thought, okay, let's make this video. First of all, when it comes to supply chains, they never remain stagnant. They always change. And it's interesting how we don't know much about freight distribution, despite all those thousands of years that we've been working at at an international level or a regional level. I would like you to be familiar with the term derived demand. This suggests that we as customers, as buyers, we have a need to buy products, and we don't care if they come by sea, land, air. The interest for transportation, the interest for the service is secondary. The primary interest is about the product. So we have to remember that, okay? Derived demand. And I want you also to know about physical distribution. We have some terms. What is physical distribution? You understand, the opposite of services, or virtual, the opposite. You also have to find the materials management definition within your paper. At the same time, you have to be familiar with the term flexible specialization or flexibilization. You also have to remember the terms of globalization, Taylor's principles of modern logistics. So he is one of the founding fathers of modern logistics. And at the same time, the terminology, what is lean management? All of this information you have from your previous classes, but also you can find in this paper by Hess and Rodriguez as part of. I am trying to give you some time before you take your test, and I have written down some keywords here. So you have to decide what was the reason contemporary logistics were designed. And then how about modernization of logistics? What was the reason for that? I want you to reflect on space and time convergence. So you have to think geography wise, you have to think time. How long do I need? How much time do I need for my commodities to move from part A to part B? And you have to consider the geographical dimensions of logistics. If you have time constraints, that's one point of the equation. If you prefer quality, if you prefer high tech, so the geographical dimension is always very important. Some other terms you have to check within your papers have to do with warehousing and the geography of freight distribution. So you have to decide if these sentences here are true or false. Pause your video and reflect which of these is true and which of these is false. Some other sentences I want you to reflect, and you have to pause your video, read carefully these sentences, and then go back to your paper and find out. How about the inland hubs? What is their significance? And what are the major drivers for global systems? And also try to figure out about distribution centers. Go back to your paper. Consider the main elements of logistics and freight distribution, as well as global outsourcing. Some other true or false questions. Global outsourcing has become very popular. In which countries in particular? And try to figure out if this sentence is true or false. Now, some multiple choice questions. Global commodity chains. Do they focus on the following? Which of the following is correct? Remember, maybe one or more questions are correct. So the system will give you multiple options to retake the test. Global value chains. You can see that answer A has the value chain component in here, whereas answer B is writing about, writes about commodities. So you have to consider which of these options is the correct one. Now that we have covered week 2 material, I would like us to be prepared for next week, week 3, your weekly tasks. Again, you will receive a particular announcement for week 3 in a few days, and you'll have to study book pages 228 to 364. Remember, from now on, you'll be focusing on your book and you don't have to search for papers and links left and right. You just focus on your book from now until the end of the semester. So for week 3, you'll be studying North America, the US, and Canada. And at this point, I would like to remind you about the template of your weekly submissions. I have sent you a lot of material, but perhaps in this video, you will find it easier to check. So this particular template pertains to Mexico, oil and gas. So remember, you focus on your group. You have joined a group, the health industry, oil and gas, green energy, whatever. So this should be the focal point. And every week, what changes is the geographic location. So this student focused on oil and gas, and the country of the week was Mexico. The student provided one paragraph here about Pemex, which is the petroleum company, the national Mexican oil company. And the student also wrote about Secretary of Energy, CENER, in Mexico. The student provided a lot of statistical information about how many million barrels of oil, how many millions of barrels a day, and so on. Collaboration between Mexico, the US, and Canada. A lot of interesting things about the Mexican economy, and so on. So pause your video and reflect about the structure of this submission. This is an A grade submission, and I would like you to take, pick and choose something that is really good and just adapt to it. And also please include at least 2-3 references. As a reminder, from now on, from week 3 onwards, you'll have to go to the same link for your book. I will be providing you with the page numbers for you to study. And as a kind reminder, you have to join a group. Many students have not joined a group yet. So please remember, if you have not done so, go back to Blackboard and join your group. After having said that, I would like to thank each one of you for being a part of this class, and I look forward to next week's video. See you then.